Going to school right now to be a lawyer is the worst idea you could ever imagine. I'm not the only one saying this.
Right.
You're going to tell me that you, doctor, that barely paid attention in school, are going to know more than these 4 data centers that compiled all of this information and came out with a diagnosis. You're going to tell me you don't think that's what it is? You know, it's not like the police departments drive cruisers in good neighborhoods and bicycles in bad neighborhoods. But for some reason, in education, we do that. I lost my mind after the pandemic when the talk of the education world was learning law. But we focus on the wrong thing. We focus on the standardized testing. We focus on memorization. We focus on the things that don't make sense. It doesn't really matter what the problem is, but what's the problem that you want to solve? The universe has a way of slapping you in the face, right?
So he grew up in Hell's Kitchen in New York City, raised on welfare by a single mom from Argentina. His options were death or prison. Instead, he got his education, joined Google as the second person on their education team, and over 15 years put technology into the hands of 130 million students and teachers worldwide. He's spoken in the White House. He's one of the most quoted voices in education. And today, he's going to tell you what your school is getting wrong and what you should do about it. Jaime Casap is here. Welcome back to the Supported Learning Podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Sebastian. Families often ask me how to navigate the educational landscape, college prep, without wasting time or thousands of dollars and in the process. And the answer usually involves people who have figured it out themselves and figured out the rules of the game. And that's why I'm thrilled that Jaime is here with us today. Again, he's Google's former Chief Educational Evangelist, a role he held for over 15 years. And he's now one of the most sought after voices on the future of education, innovation, and work. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure you're popular now with where we're rapidly moving with AI in education. People reaching out.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. It's a hot topic.
Right. So I kind of given them the highlight reel, kind of give me like the 60-second snapshot of who you are and what specific problem you're trying to solve in education.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a first-generation American born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in violence. This is the old school Hell's Kitchen back from the 70s and 80s. I was actually in New York back in October attending a conference, and I went with my daughter. Both my daughter, two of my kids live in New York, and we went to the Comedy Cellar and listening to a comedian talk about living in New York, and the comedian happened to say, anyone here grow up in a ghetto? And I raised my hand and I said, yeah, woo. You're like, where'd you grow up? And I said, and this is a young guy, so that's important to the story. He's like, in his 20s. And I said, Hell's Kitchen. And he goes, Hell's Kitchen's not and I go, in the 70s. Okay, he was like, okay, all right, cool. I get it. So he I got the respect from the comedian. He couldn't hammer me anymore. He was ready to hammer me for not growing up in the ghetto. But Hell's Kitchen in the 70s and 80s was not a great place to grow up. And I, through luck, through sports, I played basketball. I was captain of my high school basketball team. Through, hopefully some self-intelligence, I was able to, see a path out of there. And it was through education. It was graduating from high school, going to college, graduating from graduate school. And I got the chance to do what I'm doing because of education. And so for me, education it's a passion thing for me because I wouldn't exist today if it wasn't for education.
So that is, well, first off, it's truly remarkable. Like that, the immigrant come up story, right? We're to Hamilton, we have now mass distributed that this is something that happens. But, we work with a lot of families of immigrants that are coming from Southeast Asia and other places abroad. And they do have some really powerful careers, but it seems like, obviously you're talking about coming up in a lot different socioeconomic background. How did you know education was your way out? Because a lot of kids I've worked in some inner city schools, they're not hip to it being their way out and their path forward or the opportunity presented to them. How did that help you, or how did you know that as a teen that education was your way out?
Right. And I think, in a weird way, those old timers like me from back in the good old days had it easier because there's only one pathway, right? It was education. Like today, I mean, even back then, it was you could be a sports star or a music star or get your education and have a career. Today, you can luckily start. You have more options. You can start a business. So I get why teens today and those in their early 20s want to jumpstart. They want to potentially just start a business, or they just want to be an influencer, or they want to be on YouTube. Right. Like I often talk to students and they want to be influencers. We didn't have that option. Our pathway was either sports, and I wasn't good enough to play in the NBA, music, and I can't sing, or in education. So when you limit those choices, it gets a little easier for you. So education I saw who was successful, and when you did the research on who they were, education was what made them successful. So that's what I focused on.
So you said luck shouldn't be a requirement to escape poverty. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, it comes down to having to most of the time it's zip code, right? Like think about the fact that we base our education system on what zip code you live in for most of the country. There are places here in Arizona, we don't have that. It's freedom of choice. You can go to any school you want. Sure. But in lots of communities, you don't have that choice. You have to go to a school that is in your community. And so your education is based on your zip code. Nothing else is based that way, if you think about it, right? It's not like your fire department has less resources in the ghetto than it does in the high-end area, or your police car. It's not like the police departments drive cruisers in good neighborhoods and bicycles in bad neighborhoods. But for some reason, in education, we do that. We give the schools in the bad communities the least amount of resources, the least experienced teachers, and then we expect results to come out of that. So part of it is luck, literally where you're born into. That's luck stage number one. The other luck, and I was fortunate to have some really good teachers in my life. And so a lot of the time, if you're lucky to have a really good teacher that picks up on your talent or your skills or your intelligence, and they push you in a certain direction, that can mean all the difference in the world. So education shouldn't be based on how lucky you are. Not that luck doesn't play a game or play a role in anything in life, because it does, but it shouldn't be the only requirement.
That is really true. I think we focus on the wrong things too. Having worked in my second year teaching was inner city DC, and we're so focused on the college acceptance rate of those students. It's basically like we put our money, our philanthropy into making it through the gauntlet of 12 years of education, when you think we should probably be doing something from those birth to 5 till they get to it. Like, it seems like there's so many kids now that just have gaps that are almost impossible to overcome. They're so far behind their peers just because of sometimes their background, other circumstances, like you said, luck. Do you think our focus is on the wrong things in terms of where we're potentially prioritizing funding and resources?
Yeah, I think everything's on the wrong path. I think the whole focus is on the wrong thing because, during the pandemic, I lost my mind after the pandemic when the talk of the education world was learning loss. Well, look at all this learning. Like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? What you mean is these kids are not ready to take the standardized tests that we paid millions of dollars for our kids to take to see how they did so that we can get funding for the school. That's what that was. That's what learning loss meant. It wasn't my kids learned so much through the pandemic, so much about so many different subjects, but we focus on the wrong thing. We focus on the standardized testing. We focus on memorization. We focus on the things that don't make sense. And it makes sense why we focus on them, right? Because, and this is an old business phenomenon, but what gets measured gets done. And so if what we're measuring is seat time, what we're measuring are test scores, what we're measuring to get funding for schools, then that's what we're going to focus on. And so I can't blame school districts to saying we need to really make sure that our kids have a high college graduation attendance or have high test scores because that's how we get funding. Until we change that model, then what else are they going to do?
Right. So going back to your education, you get through the system. How do you get to Google?
Yeah, I actually just told the story the other day, which is I graduated from SUNY Brockport in upstate New York. I wanted to go to graduate school and keep studying public policy. And one of my political science professors said, oh, you should apply to the Kennedy School at Harvard. And this is the advice I give kids all the time, which is listen to the people who are experts in the field of education, in your education. I said to him, no, I can't go to Harvard. Kids like me can't go to Harvard. I'd get eaten alive at Harvard. And that wasn't true. But I didn't apply to Harvard. So I ended up going to ASU, going to graduate school at ASU. And I have no regrets of my path. But that's an important element, an important lesson, which is paying attention to the people who know you the best to tell you what your potential is and where you can excel. But I ended up going to ASU, graduating with a master's in public policy. I ended up working for Governor Cuomo back in New York for a couple of years. And then I ended up working for Accenture for 7 years, doing organizational development, high tech. That led me through some clients, through other work. That led me through Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab led me to knowing someone at Google and then applying for a job at Google. And I remember driving up the 101 for my on-site interviews at Google. And this is in 2005 when they were still doing the hard questions like, how many tennis balls can you fit on an airplane, or how many traffic lights are there in the US? Like old school engineering Google. And I'm driving up the 101 thinking, I remember the first time thinking like, maybe I'm smart. Forget the fact that I have a high school degree, college degree, graduate degree, work for Accenture, work for Charles Schwab, work for the government of New York, did all these things, taught freshman level classes as a senior in college. And none of those things resonated, right? I've written about this idea of like low expectation syndrome. And the worst kind is the one we place on ourselves.
Right.
But I remember driving going, maybe I'm smart, and ended up at Google. And again, back to luck. This is where luck does play a role. Ended up at Google in 2005 when it was still brand new, where it was only like 4,000 employees and you could still move around and do things in a very unique way there.
2000, that's like... is that OG Google? 2005?
That's 2005. Yeah, that's, what is that?
21 years ago.
20 years ago? 21 years ago, yeah.
Wow.
So 21 years ago, it was old school Google. We had how I started in the education space was I started as a PM working for Google, working for the CIO, and I was going to help run the Google office here in Phoenix. And when we opened up the office on the ASU campus, the CIO said, hey, everybody at ASU and their mother is going to come at you with, he had been there for a number of years. These are all the projects that Google should be involved in. Your job is to like triage those and come up with what the best projects are that Google should get involved in. And when I met with the leadership at ASU and I met with the CIO, a guy by the name of Adrian Sainer, who was a CTO there at ASU, I asked him what his biggest problem was. And at the time, this was 2005, late 2005, early 2006, he said his biggest problem was email. And, when he explained it to me, he said, we have an old antiquated email platform system where students have to use a computer, have to be a client base, has to be on a computer. They get 250 megabytes of hard drive space, so their inboxes are always full, and nobody's using it. And at this time, Gmail is 2 years old, Hotmail is 2 years old, and all the students were using Gmail and Hotmail. And so he was telling me how he had, Nobel laureate professors in classes trying to get students' email accounts, right? Like, I'm sorry, your email is hotmama69@hotmail.com. Like, is trying to communicate with his students. And I think at the time, ASU might have been 32,000 students. It wasn't that big, or it was big, but it wasn't what it is today. And I said, hey, we got this tool called Google for Your Domain where we could put ASU on top of the Gmail platform that your students are using anyway, and we could just launch it that way. And he's like, interesting idea. Got some PMs together. And 2 weeks later, we launched Google Apps for Education. So two of us launched Google Apps for Education in 2006, signed ASU, and then that woke up all the other universities. And I remember walking down the mall at ASU saying, this is what I want to do. This is the future. I want to help bring technology into education. So the first couple of years, it was just working with universities before I had the crazy idea of launching it into K-12. Went to the engineering team. We need a couple of things to make sure this works in K-12. And then I signed, and this will be the last part of the story. I signed a deal with the state of Oregon for all the school districts in Oregon. And the day we signed this agreement, 23 school districts signed up. So I knew we were on to something.
Right.
And I remember that day very clearly because there were all these articles like, Google takes on Microsoft in their backyard. Google takes a shot at Microsoft's business. The Google for Education team fires at Microsoft. Like all these 155 articles about how the Google for Education team was like going to take on Microsoft. And I remember reading these at like 1:00 in the morning going, well, the Google for Education team was going to bed because it was literally just me, right? That did this. And that kind of cascaded me into that education space in a way that was permanent because I've been focused on education ever since.
So you went from a team of 2 people to 200 and then end up impacting about 130 million plus students and educators. Walk us through how, because I've worked in K-12 education my whole life, and I've seen outside salespeople try to come in. Like, how do you convince people to trust Google with their kids' education?
Yeah. And I think that's a great question, a great way to frame it, because I remember I didn't want us to be a vendor in this space. I didn't want us just to provide email. I wanted us to be a real, true, unique, authentic partner in this space. And the way I got into this was South by Southwest, which just happened. I didn't go this year, but I had submitted a proposal to speak at South by Southwest in 2008. This is a year and a half into working with universities and seeing the trend for K-12. And I submitted a proposal, and the proposal is called Saving the Silver Bullet Through Technology, right? And the position was that education is the most important thing that we need to focus on. Technology gives us a way to focus on education in a way we've never been able to do it before. The internet gives us an opportunity to level the playing field. We should take advantage of that. And Google can do A, B, C, D. And I submitted that proposal and got accepted and spoke at this thing. And my frame for all of this has always been that. It's never been about Google tools are the best. It's never been about like you should sell this or sell that. It's always been about how do we take advantage of the technology that's in front of us to create the learning systems that we need for the future that our students deserve. Because, and I've said this many, many times, it's not about just using technology. We know what good learning looks like. Joe, you've been in education for a long time, right? You know what good learning, you know it needs to be personal. You know it needs to be personalized. You know it needs to be project-based. You know it needs to be inquiry-based. We have all the research. What I was asking schools to do is take the best ideas that we have in education and then ask ourselves, how do we use this technology? And at that time, it was just literally the internet and communication platforms. How do we use these tools to bring those ideas to life? That was the ask at that time. This was even before Chromebooks.
So yeah, okay. Now Chromebooks come around. Right. So we actually are giving, there's iPads, there's Chromebooks, there's Google Classroom. Schools bought into the technology very fast. Obviously, we went through the pandemic where it was more mass adoption, but I think we were trending that way anyway. I mean,
yeah, we were.
When was the first time I used Google Docs? I know. So here's my story of Google, because my first year teaching was 2010. And at the time I had what was it called? Was it Wiki Pages? Whatever it was, the Google sites just basically came in and took it. Like it was, I don't like a wiki page, right? Because I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But I think Google Docs came very shortly around that time too. The first time actually collaborating with teachers on Google Docs was like incredible. So that, and then now there's Google devices, there's Google Chromebooks, everything like that. So, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that have been thrown. We've adopted technology very fast in schools. I don't know, very relatively within the last decade. Did it actually make education better, in your opinion?
No. I mean, that's the short answer is no. And again, and I've written about this and I talk about this and I used to talk about this in all my presentations and keynotes, right? If all we do is the issue isn't the problem with education wasn't the lack of technology, right? The problem with education was that it was designed for a different era. And what we needed to do was create an education system that is designed for this coming era. And then we use technology to bring those ideas to life, right? Because if you take out the technology and if you go back to education in 1980, for example, and all you do is use chalkboards, chalk, and textbooks and pen and papers, you're still using technology. Those are all technologies, whether you realize it or not. Fire is a technology. These are all technologies. If all we do is use those technologies, that's not going to prepare us for the future that our kids face. If you take those tools and replace them with Google Classroom and Chromebooks and Microsoft Word and all these AI tools and don't change the learning models, then all you're doing is prettying up the old technology. It's still a chalkboard. It's still, if you're doing homework, right? If you're still sending kids home with homework, you're still messing up what you're supposed to be focused on, right? Like that to me is the issue. It's not the use of technology. So are we getting better results? Well, what are the results that we're looking for? Are we getting better test scores? Not in relative terms, no. I mean, test scores have gone up. Graduation rates are gone up. I mean, those metrics are fine. But overall, are these kids building the skills that they need for the future? And the answer there is absolutely not.
So you see it as the mode needs to change. The medium has changed, but we're still doing the same old model.
Right. We're still using the same old model, just using a different technology to do the same thing. And that to me is the biggest problem. So the biggest issue in education isn't what kind of technology to use. It's a culture shift. We need to change the culture. We need a culture of innovation and iteration. We need a culture of continuous improvement. We need a culture of hiring the right people for the right role. I mean, all the things that make good organizations great are the same things that we need in education. Technology should just be an afterthought. Technology is just a methodology. You and I are having a conversation, and it's going to be a rich conversation, whether there's a camera and an internet access or whether you are sitting here in the studio with me. It's the same conversation. This is just a way to make things easier for us to get across that point. But if we're sitting here talking about pizzas, then we're probably not going to fix education. And to me, the content is the problem. What we're teaching is the problem. The skills that we're focused on is the problem.
All right, so let's fix education.
All right, let's do it.
So for the last, let's see, I'm coming up on 17 years. I have heard 20. Well, we've stopped saying it because we're a quarter way through the 21st century. But I've heard 21st century learning skills. I've heard innovative. I've heard remake learning. I've heard redesign the education. But you're advocating because you're obviously very passionate about how it did level the playing field. It gave you an opportunity. It provided both there's equal access and equity. It provides some level of resources to kids that don't necessarily are going to have those opportunities. How do we redesign the learning environment, the schools of the current 21st century and beyond, because the model is antiquated?
Yeah, it's not that hard. Believe it or not. So things can be simple and hard to do, right?
Right.
Exercise, being healthy is a great example. You know how to be healthy, right? I know how to be healthy, but you drive by a Chick-fil-A and it's all over. Like, so you know what to do, right? You know what to eat, you know what to drink, you know how to, sleep, right? Like how many people don't sleep knowing that it's the most important thing to focus on, right? So just because it's simple, just because we haven't fixed it doesn't mean there's a complexity to it. I think it's more about will and willpower to do it. So my solution is pretty simple. And by the way, I don't just preach these things, I practice them. I have 3 kids. I have a 33-year-old, a 24-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So I like having one every decade, right? So I retired after the last one. But my 33-year-old and 24-year-old both have college degrees and they're both living in New York City. Very successful. My 11-year-old is going to be a Broadway star. We all know it. That's where she's bound to be. All 3 of them, in 33 years of being a parent, I have never once looked at a report card. I don't look at report cards. I don't look at progress reports. I go to teacher parent conference meetings every single time. I don't miss them. But
Right.
I don't look at report cards because I don't care that you think my kid is a 1 or a 2 or a 3. I want to know, how is my kid building the human skills that they're going to need? And I would argue that all 3 of my kids have good, deep human skills. So we know what the skills are. They're what I call, you're right, we call them 21st century skills. We've been saying that for so long. We're quarter way in, more than a quarter way into the 21st century. Well, the new word now is durable skills. I like to call them human skills because it separates us from the AI, and yet it doesn't. And we can get into that if you want on a different time. But the human skills are simple. Mastery of self. Can a student master themselves? Can they manage themselves? Can they manage their emotions? Can they manage their experiences? Can they manage their work? Those types of things. Human skill number 2, what I call the ability the thinking ability, the ability to think, systems thinking. Can you think? Can you do divergent thinking? Can you do systems thinking? Can you process things? Number 3, the ability to learn, which to me, if you're going to rank them, the most important one. Can you learn? You know how to learn. And this one people get wrong all the time. Like I hear people say, oh, I'm not good with AI. I'm not good with computers. I'm not very creative. And my response is always the same.
Can you learn?
This is why I don't have a lot of friends. My response is, no, you've chosen not to be good at those things. Because if you can learn, you can do those things. The analogy I like to use, the example I like to use is, you would never hear me say I'm a bad cook. I don't say I'm a terrible cook, but I don't say I'm a bad cook. I say I've chosen not to be a good one. I've chosen not to spend my time learning how to cook. It's a choice. And so when we figure out that learning is a choice, that we get to pick and choose, that gives us agency over what we want to learn. And so the ability to learn is the most important one. The 4th one is what I call storytelling skills. And we used to call them communication skills, but that word has some bad connotations associated to it. Everything from written writing and communicating. It's storytelling. It's human. It's, can you tell a story? And basically storytelling and selling is what I call it, because you're always selling something. I'm selling you an idea right now. You sold me to come to this podcast. We're constantly storytelling and selling. The 5th one is what I call community building. Can you be part of a community? Right. And by community, I mean your class, your organization, your city, your state, your whatever part of a group of people. How do you collaborate and communicate and integrate inside that community? What is your role in that community? The 6th one is what I call getting shit done skills. Like, can you get things done? Right. Yeah. Like that is an absolute critical thing. And then the last one is called what I call mastery of tools. Like, can you master tools? And by tools, I don't mean technology, but it could be technology, but tools could be hammers. Tools could be AI. Tools could be computers. Tools can be whatever. That, to me, that's the focus. Helping kids develop mastering those skills, right? And then asking ourselves, working backwards, what are the subjects that are critical for our kids to know? And how are they going to build those skills inside those subjects? Not memorize things, not, memorizing dates and figures and times, but truly build those skills through the content that we put in front of them. It's not that hard.
So the answer is, we have no shot in hell of actually doing this. That's what it sounds like. Let me give you a snapshot of what school looks like today, because I'm joking, but I do. I mean, I 100% agree with what you said. So I think you have two, not to make everything black and white, but you have two kids here. You have the kid, by the time they get to high school, the system has beaten down. It has not worked for them, and they're extremely apathetic, and they're not like they're just school does not work for them. They see 0 point in going subject to subject because they don't care. Why do I need this? That's basically right. The kid. Why do I need this? And I see that a lot. A lot of those kids usually end up finding purpose if they're fortunate enough. Like in our school, we do have a pretty good system of getting kids into this, but of like technical schools to graduate with some purpose, which might be the next wave of millionaires, which I try to like wake up like, listen, AI is going to disrupt the white collar pretty quickly. They're going to need plumbers. They're going to need electricians, but they're very apathetic. They see no value in school. So like in terms of one of your principles of being a collective, like being in a community, the social contract, they don't care, right? They're like, whatever. And then the other one, you have the compliance kid where you say grades don't matter. Because I think I'm a terrible educator parent, because I forget that my kids have report cards in elementary school. Oh yeah. Okay, cool. You're doing good. That's all they're chasing. They are chasing the grade, and boy, are their parents chasing that grade for no other purpose to get to this top score, and it's like, but they forgot to learn in the process. Because I know straight A students that can't find their way out of a paper bag. They're like, you're going to be a doctor. You couldn't follow a simple 3-direction process. So in both those elements, there's mindset and there's learning that's not happening. So how do we fix that?
Right. Here's the sad part. It's going to fix itself, because those things have been true for the things that you just mentioned. Those 2 kids have been true for a long time. Actually, my 11-year-old cares deeply about her grades, even though she knows I never look at her report cards. She cares. Sometimes a kid cares, but those scenarios, like the kid that doesn't care and the kid that cares, have been around forever. The difference is that when they graduated, there was stuff for them to do. That is no longer going to be the case. My job at Accenture, my entry-level analyst job. So I'll tell you what my first job at Accenture was. So getting into Accenture is not as like the Navy SEALs of corporate America, not the easiest place to get a job. But when you get in, you get billed out at the time, this is 30 years ago, billed out at like, $400 an hour, which today's rate is probably like $1,600 an hour. A partner would meet with a client or 2 clients, and they'd get together and they'd scribble things down and they'd create a strategy. And then they'd give it to the analyst, the brand new analyst, and they'd say, hey, take all these notes and make a strategy deck out of this, right? That used to be a job that took a high level of intelligence to be able to do. Does that exist anymore? No, that job doesn't exist anymore. Does the entry-level engineer job exist anywhere? No. So to your point about white-collar jobs, AI is coming to take those jobs. So we're going to have to deal with this one way or the other. And you're starting to see this already. All these graduates who are told to learn how to code and be programmers, they're all working at Chipotle because they can't, there's no entry-level coding jobs anymore. So the point is that the universe has a way of slapping you in the face, right? And so Mike Tyson's famous quote, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And we're about to get punched in the face.
So Google eliminated the role after 15 years. So they said the position wasn't vital. Why were they right? Why did they do that?
Well, I think I was done at Google. You can only be somewhere. You either move up or move out in most organizations, right? And I was not interested. I was really good at building a career and not having to deal with people reporting to me, right? A lot. Having small teams was always my goal. But like the idea of like going from where I was to like a VP level and managing 400 or 500 people is not something I was interested in. I also saw Google as a company that was chasing the wrong thing. And actually, when I left Google in 2020, I said it was a dying company. And I was right in 2020 because they were chasing the cloud market that Amazon already owned. And so what they did, and back to culture, they brought in all these external people from Oracle and from Sun Microsystems and from Microsoft and Amazon. And they brought in their 12 people, and it changed the culture at Google. And so I didn't want to be there anymore. There wasn't really anything else for me to do. And to be honest with you, for the 15 years, it was a struggle to prove my value to the effort that we had, because education wasn't a money-making thing for Google for most of the time that we were in education. And yet today, I think most of the calls I get and the inquiries I get from people are around this idea of evangelism and storytelling. Like, having a great idea is awesome. Taking a great idea and converting it into a great product is awesome. Selling that product, putting it on the marketplace, very hard. And so I was able to master a way of doing that in an authentic, unique way. And now I'm getting calls from people asking me to help them figure out how to do the same. And so I'm doing that work with a number of organizations today.
And you've said that you care less in what people or what kids say. You said that kids shouldn't say what they want to be when they grow up, but they should be what problems they want to solve. And so I hear that a lot, because we work with, privately, we work with a lot of kids getting ready for competitive exams, their AP exams, their SAT, their ACT, also college admissions. And usually on the initial calls, like I want my kid to be a doctor. And I ask why. It's like, because I think, I thought I grew up in a bubble. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I thought there's doctor, lawyer, teacher. That's why I thought the only jobs were out there, and, had I known, until I actually got out and saw the world, but it's funny because, the earth has become flatter. Like, I work with kids from all across the country, and I still hear those same conversations of engineer, doctor.
Right. Yeah.
Do you even want to help?
Is this from kids or from the parents? Is that from the kids or from the parents?
I think it's kind of one and the same, right? It's mainly from the parents, but the kids don't have a good why. I'll tell you, I've probably been on maybe over 1,000 calls in my short time in business with parents and students. And I've probably could count on my hand of a handful of times where the why is compelling of why you want to do it. It's just because, right. It's seen as a good job. And I'm like, the why has to go deep. And then you put that coupled with the high stakes pressure to get into a top school. And I'm like, why? Why do you need to go to Harvard to be a doctor? And why do you want to be a doctor? I love that you focus on problem solving, because I think that actually was an avenue in K-12 education that happened, but has been hijacked by the other PBL movement, project-based learning. And so,
right,
I don't see project-based learning authentically done enough in schools. It's more just activities, and it's not actually we're not trying to solve a problem. Real project-based learning is problem-based learning. We're trying to solve a problem that we don't know the answer to. It's not create a diorama. Right. Here's the requirements. Right. It's literally, hey, there's this problem in society. Take the skills you learned in my class and apply them. So how do you speak on that a lot? You want to add more to that? What do parents need to hear in that?
So let's break down that question, because I think it's part of a group of questions. And so what I used to say is, let's stop asking kids what they want to be when they grow up, and instead ask them what problem they want to solve. And it doesn't have to be a social problem. It can be how to make more money, how to make a better phone, how to make better import export processes. Doesn't really matter what the problem is, but what's the problem that you want to solve? And then the second question, and this is this one way or the other, and you're starting to see this already. All these graduates who are told to learn how to code and be programmers, they're all working at Chipotle because they can't. There's no entry level coding jobs anymore. So the point is that the universe has a way of slapping you in the face, right? So that's those things. We do a terrible job helping kids figure that stuff out. And the formula and the formats that we currently use to do that are terrible. And we can get into that because aptitude tests are 200 years old and has no diversity or neurodivergency in it. And self-reporting assessments are BS because everyone sees themselves in a better light, right? You live in Pittsburgh. If I ask you what's driving like in Pennsylvania, oh my God, driving is terrible. It's terrible to drive around Pittsburgh. If I ask you what kind of driver you are, oh, I'm a great driver. Same thing with schools. All schools suck. How's your school? Well, my school is great. So self-reporting doesn't work. So we can get into the self-reporting stuff in a minute. But the second question, how do you want to solve that problem, matters. How do you want to take your talents, your gifts, your experiences and solve that problem? And then the third question is, okay, cool. What do you need to learn to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to build on to solve that problem? And when you can focus on that. So if you say, I want to solve the problem of space exploration. Cool. How do you want to solve that? I want to be an astronaut. Really? Are you good, in 0G gravity? Are you good with, going to the Navy? Are you good with being a test pilot? All these things that go associated with that. Right. Yes, you are. Cool. Okay. What do you need to learn? Or then you need to go to the Naval Academy. There's a pathway when you create that kind of thing. But to me, more important than what problem do you want to solve, the question of how do you want to solve it? And I'll tell you, this is a true story, and you can ask my daughter about this question. You can ask my daughter about this. But and this is a story you can clip this for all the parents that you're going to talk to. My daughter came to me and said, this is when she's at ASU. My kids went to ASU. To your point, they didn't need to go to Stanford. When she said, I'm going to be a business major, I said, oh, okay, which I would assume for a majority of your parents is like a dream for your kid to say, I want to be a business major. I'm like, cool, tell me more. And she said, well, I looked at jobs because she's practical, and I think I want to focus on business marketing because that seems to be the closest to what I'm good at and what I want to focus on. And I said, interesting. Okay, cool. Not paying for that. I said, as a parent, as an immigrant, as a first generation American, the first person to ever go to college in his family, said to the second kid to ever go to college, I said, nope, not paying for that. If you go to school and you are a film major, go get an art degree, I will pay for that, which is unheard of in the realm of parenting. Why? Why did I say that? Because this kid had been making movies on anything that she can find since she was 5 years old. What does she do? What does she do today? She's made 2 movies and owns her own movie studio in New York City. She's worked at Courageous. She's worked at CNN. She's made all the fake news that you watch. She's done all that work in video and film because she's always wanted to do that work. She's talented. My son, my middle kid, my 24-year-old, when he was in college, he came to me and said, I think I'm going to be a political science man. And I'm like, political science? You don't even know who the governor is. No, you're not doing that. Why? Because I know every politician in the state. 2 days before his younger sister was born, we had a political event here for the governor in my house. This kid has never shown the day he asked me, the day he told me he wanted to be a political science major. One of my best friends, Ruben Gallego, was running for senator in Arizona. Did he ever come to me and say, hey, I want to work on a political campaign? Hey, can you connect me with these guys? Hey, can you No, never. So that's not. So my kids told me who they were going to be by me observing them, right? Not by me wishfully thinking that they're going to be doctors and lawyers, by actually looking at their talents and their skills and where they shine and what they do. And now what is he doing? He's doing customer engagement stuff for a financial company, which is perfect for him. So to all parents, pay attention to your kids, not to your world, not to your friends and what your friend, like, so that you can go to a soccer camp, be like, oh yeah, little Johnny's going to Harvard and studying medical and law. That's all bullshit. Helping kids understand who they are and what they care about. That's where their passion and happiness will come from.
So we learn by doing is what you're essentially saying.
My 11-year-old just starred as Fiona in her school musical, right? And since she was 3 years old, I knew that this kid's going to be like 16, going to be like, okay, I'm going to New York, going to go to Broadway, and we're going to be like, okay, bye. Kids, if your kids are lucky to know to have a passion, right? Then let them follow that passion. Let them see where that drives them, as opposed to you driving where you want them.
I wish we blocked out another hour. I want to end on this then. Education and AI. Should parents be excited or terrified?
So 2 things about that. Related to what we just talked about, which is this. Being a lawyer going to school right now to be a lawyer is the worst idea you could ever imagine. I'm not the only one saying this, because all entry-level law is going to be done by machine learning. Going in and being a doctor is a bad idea, because there'll be senior people that manage systems, but like it's kind of like getting into the Uber in New York City, right? You get into an Uber at the airport in New York, and the Uber app will say, these are the directions to get to your destination. And the Uber driver will be like, I'm not listening to that. I know, I've been here before. I know how to go. And you're like, no, follow the instructions. Follow the thing, right? Doctors are going to be like that. Like, you're going to tell me that you, doctor, that barely paid attention in school, are going to know more than these 4 data centers that compiled all of this information and came out with a diagnosis. You're going to tell me you don't think that's what it is? No. So those jobs are being replaced by AI. And so here's the flip, right? Which is, yes, AI is coming to take our jobs. Flip that to, hey, guess what? AI is coming to take our jobs. Isn't that great? Because what's the point of work? Why do we work? Do we work? We work to make money so that we can buy things, so that we can live, so we can survive. If we can not have to do some of the process work, some of that boring work, but if we can find work that enriches us, that fulfills us, that brings us joy, and make money doing it, and let the AI engines take care of all that other stuff, absolutely, let's go do that, right? And so there's going to be some churn and all that. There's going to be some dystopia before we get to utopia, but that's all, again, up to us to manage. And then the last thing about AI in education is, and this is what scares me and why I'm talking more about this, is because I'm starting to see the patterns of closure. I'm starting to see state legislatures trying to ban technology in education. I'm starting to see screen time being banned in schools. And the problem is that we are at the cusp, because it's not happening yet, but we're almost there, where AI can help us bring what I would consider the nirvana of education, which is personalized learning, right? Before we got to system learning, school systems, how did we learn? We learned through apprenticeships, right? If I was a stone masonry person, you worked with me for 20 years before you can go do it. It was one-on-one learning. All right. If I was a writer, you were my apprentice, my editor, my researcher for 10 years before you went on wrote on your own. We took that model, we took that apprenticeship model, and we said, we need to scale that almost McDonald's style to 30 kids in one classroom at a time and teach them that way, right? We now have an opportunity to go back to personalized learning. We got halfway there with the current technology, which is we can personalize inputs. We can personalize like what you're looking for, what you're searching for, the information you want, but you couldn't personalize the outputs. AI can give us the opportunity to personalize the outputs. And so you and I, if I had to, by state law, learn algebra, right? Then if an AI engine can teach you a certain way and teach me a certain way and make it unique and individualized so that we both learn at different paces and in different ways, right? That's the benefit of AI. We're almost there. Some of these AI companies are still replacing current systems. Some of them are thinking about it a little deeper. But again, what gets measured gets done. So until we start measuring outcomes, right? A thinking student, a well-defined student with goals. And so we start getting to a place where we can identify those human skills and the mastery of those human skills. AI can help us personalize both inputs and outputs, and we're almost there. So I would ask parents to hang on until we get some of this stuff right.
Well, I love that. I would love, Jaime, if I know you're a busy guy, but I would love for you to come back and we could carry on this conversation. It's been a pleasure, honestly. This is great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate your time and anytime you want to talk more, any topic, bring it up. We'll talk.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Try not to enjoy the sun too much out in Arizona, as I'm in gray skies, Pittsburgh. But we'll see you next time on this.
I don't know what the weather is like there, but here it is.
It's great. It's 20 degrees and snowing.
Oh, I'm sorry. And what's the wind chill factor? It's probably worse than that, right?
Probably worse. It's horrible. My wife has seasonal depression all the time.
Oh, so here it's 77, but with the wind chill, it's 79.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not. It's a real tough life. I know.
It's tough.
Jaime, thank you. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on the Supported Learning Podcast.
Thanks, Joe.